Hello and welcome. In today's video, we are continuing our beloved series of showcasing exceptional ordinary people and dividend investors that amassed mind-blowing and unbelievable wealth by playing the long-term investing game and investing in dividend-paying stocks. These people lived a life that wasn't flamboyant, yet they were secret millionaires. These are people whose strategy we should all emulate and build wealth for our generations. If you remember, this past July 4th holiday, we gave the story of Mr. Ronald Reed, who amassed a dividend portfolio of $8 million as a janitor. Be sure to check it out if you haven't seen it. On this Labor Day holiday, we are following the series with another legendary dividend investor who also amassed a dividend portfolio of $8.2 million as a legal secretary of a law firm in New York. This woman amassed a stock and dividend portfolio worth $8.2 million at the time of her death. Today's special woman is named Mrs. Sylvia Bloom. Like the subject of our last video, Ms. Sylvia Bloom is another ordinary woman whose life is surely worth a documentary. She's an unsung hero in form of a stock and dividend growth investor, someone who truly lived below their means by being reasonably frugal, and a true philanthropist and a legal secretary. I'm sure you'll find the story of 96-year-old Mrs. Sylvia Bloom intriguing and inspiring. Mrs. Sylvia Bloom, also known as the Secret Secretary or $8 million Secretary, was born on October 23, 1921 by Eastern European immigrants. She was raised in Brooklyn during the Great Depression and went to public school. Ms. Bloom sent herself through college at night. Her family and friend knew her to be a frugal saver. In 1947, Ms. Sylvia Bloom started working at Cleary Gottlieb Steen and Hamilton Law Firm in Brooklyn, New York. She was one of the firm's first employee, and was loyal and employed there for 67 years. She was a working-class frugal saver who worked as a legal secretary yet amassed a fortune that most people working better jobs don't have at retirement. There were only two other partners that had been at the firm longer than her. Mrs. Bloom wasn't only frugal, she lived a modest life in Brooklyn, New York, where she rode the subway to work almost every day. So, was Mrs. Sylvia Bloom ever married? Yes, she was. She married Raymond Margolis and they both lived in a one-bedroom rent-controlled apartment. Another interesting thing about Mrs. Bloom was the fact that even with being married she kept her name. According to her cousin, Flora Mobile Bornstein, she said, keeping her name was indicative of her independent nature. According to her niece, she was a tough woman, and a tough, savvy New Yorker. Mrs. Bloom's husband, Raymond Margolis, however, died in 2002. Mr. Margolis also had a very interesting career. According to relatives, Mr. Margolis was a city firefighter who retired and became a city schoolteacher with a pharmacist career on the side. Mrs. Bloom continued her work at the Cleary Gottlieb Steen and Hamilton Law Firm in Brooklyn, New York, until she retired at the age of 96. According to Sylvia's niece, Jane Locken, Sylvia dressed well, and even owned a fur coat that was Persian lamb. Sylvia wasn't a conspicuous spender. Just like those days where there wasn't formal investing training, Ms. Sylvia had an interesting strategy and tactics. She knew she wanted a better life in retirement, she knew she wanted more in life, so she looked for a way to invest like the rich even though she didn't make so much. So, how did she do it? Well, it was the smartest thing ever. Mrs. Sylvia was secretary at the time when secretaries do much more. Mrs. Sylvia Bloom obviously seized the opportunity and paid attention to her boss' instructions when he asked her to buy stocks on his behalf. When her boss instructs her to buy certain stocks in his personal account, Ms. Sylvia Bloom will buy the same exact stocks in small quantity she could afford, in her own personal account. Pure genius. Sylvia Bloom died at the age of 97 in 2016. There was a great revelation, however, at the time of her death. The revelation was enormous and quite surprising to everyone, including her immediate family. To everyone's chagrin, Ms. Sylvia Bloom was a silent self-made millionaire and left instructions in her will and testament which revealed her net worth, and instructions to donate her total of wealth of $8.2 million to education programs and a scholarship fund. This sure made the headline news. According to Sylvia's close niece, Jane Locken, in an interview with CNBC Make It, she said, the extent of her fortune surprised some of the people close to her. Sylvia Bloom was certainly quiet about her wealth, and the fact that she lived a modest but comfortable life helped her stay silent about her wealth. She lived comfortably but wasn't flashy or flamboyant. Jane Lockshin made sure that she picked up the tab whenever she and her Aunt Sylvia Bloom went out for lunch. It was the least Jane could do for her Aunt Sylvia, who was a secretary, a widow living in a one-bedroom rent-control apartment, and took the New York subway to work at the time. Little did Jane know that her Aunt Sylvia was a secretary millionaire. No one knew Ms. Sylvia Bloom was building a legacy in form of an investment portfolio filled with valuable stocks. It has always been Mrs. Bloom's dream for her wealth to be donated and used as scholarship for needy children. She gave $6.24 million to the Henry Street Settlement in New York, where they used it for scholarships for the Expanded Horizons College Success Program. This was for disadvantaged students and was the largest donation ever from one single individual in the settlement's 126 years history. An additional $2 million went to scholarship funds, which included Mrs. Bloom's alma mater, Hunter College. So, what are the lessons we all can take away from the legendary move of this great woman named Mrs. Sylvia Bloom? 1. Invest in what you know, or copy what works. Mrs. Bloom's only invested in business that her boss instructed her to invest in for him. She saw an opportunity to legally copy her boss's stock orders, and did it with her own money in her own account. 2. Buy and hold would make you a millionaire. Don't be a day trader. Like Mrs. Bloom played the buy and hold long-term game, which helped her alleviate fees, and harnessed the power and advantage of deferred taxes, and more importantly allowed the dividend snowball. 3. Living a life of a secret millionaire. Ms. Bloom didn't make noise about her wealth, neither did she do anything to draw attention to herself. 4. Being frugal. Keeping expenses under control no matter how much she was worth or how much she was saving. Do you know that Mrs. Bloom rode the bus and train to work to keep costs under control when she could easily afford a car? 5. Anyone can do it. If Mrs. Bloom could amass this much on a secretary's salary, then it is possible to do the same regardless of how much one makes. The status of millionaire is attainable for anyone who is ready to sacrifice, put in the work, and invest wisely and diligently. 6. The terrain will not be easy. And it won't be perfect. When we think about Mrs. Bloom's remarkable life, legacy, and profession, we don't say Mrs. Bloom was a secretary. We say the great Mrs. Sylvia Bloom was a true philanthropist, and more importantly, a true dividend growth stock investor. From Wealth Listicles, we say thank you to Mrs. Sylvia Bloom. That's it for this video, guys. I hope to see you in the next video. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you know when we post another interesting finance video. Until next time.